So the factory is the main asset of Chipmunk Ince Cement. We started building the factory early in 2016. We commissioned it in the early part of 2018. So it's been running just over a year now. The company has a capitalization of about 262 million. And the plant is comprising about 90% of that capital outlay. We have a capacity of about 1.7 to 1.8 million tons of cement, and that is comprising about 90% of the cement we sell in the country. So there's still a balance of about 10%, which is imported. And we're employing 250 people, full-time employees at the plant, and across the company about 380 people. Challenged all around you. It's a remote area. Finding the right skills to operate and maintain such a plant has been a challenge. We are, however, blessed by a very energetic and enthusiastic workforce who want to learn. So we've had to deploy a lot of knowledge transfer. We have people working from the wider parts of the Ince group, coming from Thailand, Vietnam, etc. We were also challenged in finding a stable power supply for the plant as well. And we are connected to the national grid. We do not have a captive power plant. Plant is consuming, when everything is running, it's consuming about 28 megawatts. The connection from the EDC, however, is very solid indeed. It's a reliable connection. We're connected at the 115 kilovolt level, so fairly high up on the transmission level. And we have had no issues with EDC supply of power. But we took the view early on in developing the strategy of the company that we would rather have a diversified source of supply for our power. So what we've done is we are taking about 65 to 70% of the supply from EDC. About 25% comes from a waste heat power plant, so we are able to produce power from our own waste heat, from our process, from our thermal process. And about 6 to 8%, almost up to 9% solar power. Well, the drivers of demand in any market are the population growth and the GDP growth. So here you have a population in Cambodia growing about 1.2, 1.3% per annum, according to the figures that I have access to. And GDP growth is on the record between 6-7%. So they're the drivers of cement growth. We have basically year-on-year cement demand growth between 6, 7, 8%. Some years spurred on by infrastructure spending, it can peak as high as 10, 11% per annum. So the customers, the consumption of cement is roughly 70%, 75% at the retail level. Mom and pop stores selling to people building their own homes, and then you have the industrial markets where we're building the high-rise buildings, the hotels, the condos, etc. On the waste heat, what we're doing is the thermal process of the cement of the manufacturing line has got exhaust, has got waste heat. So we invested firstly to harness that waste heat and to convert it to electrical power. So that was a $13.5 million investment, and we're able to cater for 8 megawatts of our demand from the waste heat. But we saw that we have a lot of roof space. The sun does shine in Cambodia. Even during the rainy season, there was good scope seen to, or good scope expected to install a solar plant. We also have some water bodies. We have a large catchment pond which you use for drainage of the rainwater which comes off the mountain to the north of the plant. And so we harvest that water, and we also wanted a supplier who could cater for a floating solar plant. So the combination of consistent offtake, high degree of offtake meaning power demand, plus a lot of vacant rooftop spaces, And this water pond lent itself very well to putting a large capacity solar plant in. There is a mixture. It has an economic benefit, but it offsets CO2 emissions at the power plant. So if we are consuming, or if we're able to get from solar 8% of our power needs, then it's 8% less power that we'll draw from the coal-fired power plant from the national grid. So that has a positive impact in terms of the indirect carbon footprint. It also has positive environmental impact. I mentioned the water catchment pond, so we have a large floating solar installation there. We have a high degree of evaporation of water if it's exposed to the sun, but if you put solar panels in between the water and the sun, you're able to lower the amount of evaporated losses. So in that sense, it allows us to retain more captured water, which we use for our process, and that means that we draw less water from the environment in that respect. And obviously, if we would be able to reduce completely our draw from the national grid, it would be a lot better, because the electricity demand in Cambodia is increasing. To my knowledge, there's a high percentage of power which has to be imported into the country. So the more we're able to generate ourselves by waste to energy or by solar, the better for the country. But it's also good to have a diversification of sources in anything, so there's a risk management aspect in that regard. Before you embark on solar, there must be a regulatory framework. So I believe it's taken a bit of time to get for the authorities to set a regulation framework up. We had to wait for that. We were ready to install solar earlier, so we waited on the regulator. When the regulations came out, they're, at least from our point of view, from a heavy industry point of view, quite well written, quite clear. So once the PRACAS came out, we were able to start immediately. And we looked around for suppliers who had experience in the country, and obviously experience in large-scale solar plants. The advantage of a factory like ours is that we have uncurtailed scope for solar, meaning our demand is way higher than what the solar panels are able to emit during the day. So we have uncurtailed demand. So that's fairly good from an economic point of view. We're able to utilize all of the solar power available. Well, again, Chipmunk INSEE is the JV of the Chipmunk Group, or which the Chipmunk Group is connected to, which is producing cement. Now, the Chipmunk Group has got other available demand centers for solar, which I'm convinced in due course they will look at. But for Chipmunk INSEE cement, it was the fact that we have huge demand offtake, and we have lots of, as I said, roof spaces, and we have that water body as well, which we knew that we could harness for solar power. Once we knew that there would be a breakthrough on the regulatory front, we started looking around for suppliers who could address our needs and who had experience in Cambodia. And we ran a bidding exercise. Clean Tech Solar came to us with a solution which avoided us having to make a direct investment. They basically have a solution which comes down to them saying, well, if you have roof space, we will place our solar panels on your roof. We will operate and maintain that installation over multiple years, and we can offer you a solution whereby you pay at the kilowatt-hour meter. So this appealed to us because we want to concentrate on our business, which is the manufacturing of cement. So we found in Clean Tech Solar a willing partner to go into this power purchase agreement. We did some checks. They brought us out to the Phnom Penh Special Economic Zone. They brought us up on the roof of, I personally went up myself on the roof of the Coca-Cola plant there. And we could tell from interacting with the Clean Tech Solar people, they brought some Common Khmer managers there as well, that we were looking at a competent partner. rather than just a supplier, but a partner. Because when you go for a power purchase agreement, a PPA route to your solar power needs, you want to be working with a partner who you can trust for the longer term. We compared buy versus build, or basically lease versus build. Found that the solution of signing a power purchase agreement was the better option. And we duly did that roughly about 9 or 10 months ago. We met with the management of Cleantech Solar. We met with the founders of Cleantech Solar. We found again a good partnering kind of atmosphere, common mindsets, and we decided that it was a safe bet for us to work with Cleantech Solar. And we duly signed up, and the solar plant is now finished, commissioned, and everything's on track. It's attractive depending on where your balance sheet is at that moment. And so obviously we're a new plant. You know, the company is young. So if you can find a solution to be able to run it on an operating lease instead of putting it on your own balance sheet, it makes sense. But the main driver for us was not a financial driver. The main driver for us is, again, we want to concentrate on manufacturing cement. Our know-how is based around that. Our know-how is not based on solar. We have over a 20-year agreement with Cleantech Solar. We don't know how the technology will advance over the next 20 years. I'm convinced it will. And I'd rather be in the hands of a company like Cleantech Solar who understand how the technology works. They may choose to upgrade. We'll still have our roofs, we still have our water ponds, and they may be able to increase in a substantial manner the yield from the solar panels. And I'd rather leave that expertise up to them, and that's the main driver. I'm not an expert in that, but possibly less for us because we don't need to store. If we had a demand profile where the solar power coming out was in excess of what we can demand during the day, then we need to store it. Right now, it's an open road, so power storage for us is not really a primary issue or concern. The disadvantage was you have to have expertise. You have to know what you're buying. So our expertise is not in power. Our expertise is in the manufacture and the selling of cement. So we just want to get to an efficient kind of a partnership with people who understand how to install, how to operate and maintain. We did look, as I mentioned, of doing it ourselves. Then you have a partner for a short part of the journey, which is to source and procure and install. And after that, for the next 20 years, you have to operate and maintain. And what if something goes wrong? What if the technology has a step change? You then are left with obsolete equipment. A company like Cleantech Solar will probably find other places to redeploy these assets if the technology changes, but not chipmunk in sea. So we decided that it makes more sense to go for an operating lease and to work with a long-term partner over the long term. We found that made more financial sense and quite frankly makes more business sense. Depends what your business is. If you want a pain-free solution working with people who share a common mindset, it's been very, very straightforward working with Cleantech Solar. And with Common Khmer, mind you. Common Khmer have behaved exemplary at site, safety, OH&S. We've been able to learn from each other. They've taught us a lot on safety. We've been able to help them also. So we found in Common Khmer a very willing partner. They observed all of our safety rules. They look after their people. It's a dangerous occupation installing panels on very high roofs. Some of our roofs are complex. We have a kind of an aircraft hangar curved roofs. Extremely challenging. They're not flat roofs. They're heavily inclined in some parts of them, and very, very tricky to deploy safely. both equipment and personnel at such heights on such a curved roof. Common Khmer, working with Cleantech Solar, found a solution to this, a very safe one, and they have worked extremely well in a cooperative manner. And I could